Welcome again, Maxim here, and this video is about stripping armor. Armor is one of the basic stats. It determines how much less damage will reach the target. At low levels, the value of the armor is not very impressive, so it is not much of a problem when eliminating hordes of enemies. However, at higher levels, on the steel path or on endless missions, the armor can be a noticeable problem, turning enemies into bullet sponges. To avoid this situation, the player can use one of the most important mechanics in the game, armor reduction. By stripping all of the armor of your opponents, you turn them into soft jellies. In this material, I will present currently available possibilities, techniques, and abilities that will allow you to reduce or completely remove armor from your opponents. First, I will quickly show you why removing armor is so important. Let's use an example, the simplest type of Grineer unit, Lancer. By default, at level 1, it has 100 armor. This base value grants him with 17.32% damage reduction. Depending on his level, multipliers will be applied to his base stats. When this unit reaches level 32, he has about 300 armor, which translates into 30% damage reduction. At level 85, around 1200 armor, 60% damage reduction. These do not scale infinitely, and the increase slows down. To reach 80% damage reduction, this mob must be at level 190, around 2140 armor. But when he reaches level 263, his armor is equal to 2700. And this is the maximum value for all mobs in the game. This does not mean that all stats stop scaling there. Health and shields scale always, with every mob level. But back to the armor topic. If you think, level 263 is very high, I will never fight against that kind of mobs, so I can skip this topic. Then hold your horses. Firstly, there's a game mode when you start a mission with mobs on level 400. And this is not the only hard mode in this game. And secondly, there are many types of mobs in the game. Let's check for instance Bombard, other Grineer unit. His lowest possible level is 4, base armor 500. So in the easiest variant he already has almost 39% damage reduction. At level 29, around 1200 armor, almost 60% damage reduction. And at level 53, he already reaches maximum armor value, 2700, 90% damage reduction. And this is only one out of many elite Grineer units in the game, which reaches high armor values very quickly. So let's move on to how to make the game easier and get rid of this modifier, or at least reduce it. Let's start with mods. The first will be Aura, Corrosive Projection. It reduces the current value of enemy's armor by 18%. The strength of this aura can be increased with Coaction Drift. The maximum reduction from it is set on 80%. You can achieve such value with 4 auras in a team with 3 coactions. This aura can be used as a help to reduce the overall enemy armor while using some Warframe abilities, which I will describe in a moment. But remember, if you strip enemy armor by 80% with some other technique, for instance with 10 corrosive procs, then corrosive projection does absolutely nothing. Mod for Kavats, Sharpened Claws, gives them the ability to strip all armor from a single enemy unit. This effect has a 4-second cooldown, but you can also use Vicious Bond. It will not strip fully, but still do the job. Another one is Amalgam Argonac Metal Auger. Thanks to it, attacking an enemy with a dagger will strip 6 points of its base armor. You can get a similar effect with the Shattering Impact mod. You put it in a melee weapon, and if it has even a tiny bit of impact damage, the enemy hit with it will lose 6 points of base armor. However, if you are using mods increasing slash or puncture damage in your build, the armor reduction effect may never work. But on such a simple build like this, it worked very well. This mod will be effective on weapons with high attack speed and high attack rate per second, so check which stance will be better. You can also use it on gunblades. These weapons fire multiple projectiles at once, and each pellet can reduce armor like a separate strike. Sarpa, for example, is very popular in this approach. And if you have any kind of Latron, but the best would be Wraith, you can insert Incarnate Genesis in it. On 4th evolution, you can select one very interesting perk, removing 20% of enemy armor per puncture status. 5 occurrences and enemy is fully stripped. Moving on, there are 2 stairs effects that reduce armor, fire and corrosion. They work on the actual amount of enemy armor, they don't modify the base value. Fire reduces 15, 30, 40 and 50% of armor every half of a second, counting from the moment of igniting. When the fire on the enemy burns out, he slowly regains his armor. The second status is corrosion. First proc reduces armor by 26%, and each subsequent proc increases this value by 8%, up to 80. Same limitation as corrosive projection. Since projection, fire and corrosion will reduce armor percentages, projection and corrosion are capped at 80, and armor return to the default values when the status effect end, you can't strip all armor with these techniques only, even if you use coaction drift. In the best case, you will leave enemies with 2% of their armor. I will mention here one more skill for armor removal, Caustic Strike. Second skill from the Unairo Operator School, removes 100% of enemy's armor within 8 meters. Before we move on, I need to mention one important thing. Through many years, almost each unit had different resistances and susceptibilities to their flesh, armor and shields. Now it is unified. Example, if unit is susceptible to corrosive damage, then no matter if that unit has or doesn't have armor, it will always take more damage from corrosive. Resistances and susceptibilities are assigned to all units in a given faction, no matter of their armor or shield presence. Alright, it's time for Warframe skills that strip armor. Let's start with ones that do it by default without any augments. Caliban, the 4th skill, creates 2 beams that explode at the point of contact, which is where you aim. Enemies within the blast radius will be stripped of a percentage of their armor, or even all of it, if ability strength is equal to 100% or higher. Alternatively, you can use corrosive projection in the build, then 164% strength is enough. Conculists, summoned with 3rd skill, can help to spread armor stripping beam while Caliban is casting it. Avalanche, Frost 4th ability, strips 60% of enemy armor. Using it again, remove the rest of it. However, you can increase strength to 168% to remove all armor in first use. Or you can do 138% and add corrosive projection. Works the same. Gauss. Here you need to use a combination of his skills. By tapping the 3rd ability, you create a freezing area, while holding it, a fire area. Gauss recharges his battery by moving or casting a freezing area. You can fully charge it using the 4th skill. When you charge it to 100% and create both an ice and fire circle in one place, you will generate an explosion that will strip opponent's armor entirely. Grendel. The 3rd ability turns him into a ball. Each enemy hit in this state loses 50% armor by default, all of it at 200% strength, or 164% with corrosive projection. But Grendel can also strip armor in some area, if you swallow a mob with your 1st ability and then spit it out with 4th ability. Enemies in close area from the spit point will lose their armor, 134% or more strength to strip all, or 110 with corrosive projection. Mag on default stats strips with the polarization, 3rd skill, 400 points of shields or armor of the enemies. Every 100% more ability strength increases that value by another 400. Since it's a fixed number, not a percentage, the higher level enemies, the more times you'll need to use this ability to strip off all armor. There's also an augment for the 4th skill. Using it on enemies will cause them to lose 75% of their armor. This can be increased to 100 at 134% strength. Nick's 2nd ability throws blades that reduce 80% of the target's armor. On one throw, 6 blades are thrown, locks onto its own target. You can bump up the amount of reduction to 100% by increasing your strength to 125. However, to strip armor from more enemies, you have to either kill the ones you hit earlier, or you can recast the ability, but here the armor removal is temporary. Casting the skill on subsequent enemies will restore armor to those previously hit. If you use Oberon's 4th ability on enemies that are affected by his 2nd ability, you will take off 50% of their armor by default. With 200 ability strength, or 164 with corrosive protection, you strip all of it. Vauban. Enemies suspended in Bastille will lose 10% of their armor for each second they are suspended. Every 100% of strength is a 10% reduction, so at 200% strength it will reduce 20% each second, etc. Xaku on the 3rd ability can choose Gaze. Trapped enemy will generate an aura at 200% strength, strips all armor and shields of nearby enemies. When the ability ends or enemies leave the area, their armor and shields return. Dagath. Enemies marked with 2nd ability and attacked with 4th will lose, by default, 35% of their armor or shields on every viral occurrence from individual cave. With 287% ability strength, you can fully strip with every viral proc, or with 236% using corrosive projection. But due to the fact that one cave can attack and apply viral multiple times, one ability cast, even with lower strength, can fully strip enemies. Jade. Her 3rd ability, by default, strips 10% of enemy armor. There is no way to elevate ability strength high enough to make it strip in 1 second, by normal methods. So just general advice. When you make a build with, let's say, 200 ability strength, this reduces fully stripping time to just 5 seconds. The more you have, the faster it will work. So it is a matter of personal preference. Corrosive projection will also speed up that process. And we have Hydroid. Here stripping is super simple, all because of his passive ability, which causes the first corrosive proc made by him strip not 26 but 50% of enemy armor. So upon 10 stacks of corrosion on a given mob, you fully strip it. You can proc corrosion with any weapon held by Hydroid or with his skills. Now let's move on to abilities that can reduce or remove armor, but with the help of some augments. Banshee. 1st skill augment. By default, it strips 70% of the armor. Increase strength to 143% or use the skill several times to remove it all. Protea. Each hit with her 1st and 2nd ability, while using augmented 4th skill, reduce enemy armor by 10% for every 100 ability strength. Trinity. After augmenting her 3rd ability, strips armor of the enemies connected to her. By default, it is a 60% reduction. With 168% of your ability strength, you'll strip it all for the duration of the skill. Qorvex, 2nd ability. Containment walls, enhanced with an augment, by default strip 50% of enemy armor. Full strip on one cast with 200% ability strength, or 164 using corrosive projection. There are also Warframe abilities, both augmented and regular, which can be used to strip down the opponent's armor and can be transferred to other Warframes using the Helminth system. The only exception here is skill from Gauss. It is available from Helminth. However, battery mechanic is unique to Gauss. Any other Warframe with this ability deals damage like when the battery is 50% charged. And since the mechanics of removing armor with this skill require more charge, so only Gauss himself can do that. And a small addition about skills from Helminth, some abilities have their stats reduced compared to the original, or the way they work is slightly changed. But most of the next few skills work almost identical on other Warframes. Ember's 3rd skill reduces armor by half, but this value can be increased. The 2nd ability, when activated, displays a meter in the lower right corner. By using the 1st and the 4th skill, you'll speed up heating up. Once the bar is full, it is 90%, using the 3rd ability will now remove all armor from enemies within the ability's range, but you can also cast it twice. In other Warframes, this skill always reduces armor by 75%, and you cannot increase this amount, so you always have to cast twice to remove all armor. Ash. The augment on the 1st ability removes 70% of the armor of the hit enemy for 8 seconds. Increase strength to 143% to strip it all. You can extend the duration of this effect with mods for the ability duration. Hildryn, by default, removes 25% of the armor or shields of the enemies within the range of the second ability. However, keep in mind that if the unit has shields, this skill will first reduce shields. The amount of reduction can be increased by increasing ability strength, but you need to raise it up to 400% to achieve 100% reduction with a single ability use. It is quite difficult. However, you can help yourself with the Mold Augmented Arcane. It can add up to 60% strength. Or you can add Corrosive Protection. Then 330% ability strength is enough. Or even 270 if you use Projection and Arcane together. When using this ability on another Warframe, one cast drains 50 energy instead 150 shields. One small info: Augment Blazing Pillage used with Haven set mobs on fire. But this status effect reduces mobs' actual armor by some percent, so it cannot help with fully stripping. To fully strip, recast that ability, use Corrosive Projection, or increase ability strength. Styanax, the second skill. Enemies within range lose 50% of their armor, all at 200% ability strength, or 164 with Corrosive Projection. Nekros, Terror, his second ability, removes 60% armor by default, from up to 20 enemies in range. He will strip it all at once with 168% ability strength, or 138 with Projection. At the end, we need to discuss one more thing. There is a way to fully strip enemies with any Warframe or any weapon. All you need to use is Corrosive, and to be more precise, 14 Corrosive stacks. But wait a minute, didn't I said that corrosion stacks up to 10? Yes, but only by default. It's all about Emerald Archon Shards. You create Emerald Shards by combining Azure with Ember Shards in the special tab to which you have access after buying Helminth Coalescent segment from Bird 3 on Sanctum Anatomica, having rank 2 or higher in the Cavia Syndicate. Each of these shards allow you to increase the maximum corrosion stacks applied by a given Warframe by 2, with Tau Forged by 3. So you need to use 2 regular ones and you will be able to fully strip enemies with any weapon that deal corrosive damage and have at least tiny bit of status chance. But you know, the more, the better. Yet there's one more but. As you know from the beginning of the video, the maximum value of enemy's armor is 2700. After applying 13 stacks of corrosion on enemy with 1 Tau Forged Emerald, his armor is reduced by 98%. So in the worst case, he will be left with 54 armor, which translates into almost 13% of damage reduction. As you can see in the video, most of the mobs just die before I even fully strip them. So maybe just use 1 Emerald Tau and that second Archon Shard slot to elevate your damage. In worst case, you'll have the same result as in case of using second Emerald Shard. But it may also happen that you will end up with way more combat effective setup. Do some tests and choose the best variant for your playstyle. You can always use 1 Tau Emerald and some shard for survivability, for instance. And that's all about stripping armor. If you have any questions in this topic or any other, the comment section is yours. Or you can visit me on one of my streams on Twitch. Link is in the description. See you next time. Bye.